I'm going to present Sakshi Jain. Is a
Yes, yes,
museologist,
yes.
photographer, and artist who who worked as an assistant curator at the MSMS Second Museum, Nestle, within the resplendent city palace of Jaipur, India. She's also the recipient of the prestigious Erasmus Mundus Scholarship 2023-2025 and is currently pursuing a master in managing art and cultural heritage in the global markets, entailing captivating, captivating mobility periods of the vibrant cities of Glasgow, Lisbon, Paris, and Rotterdam. Her passion lies in preserving a narrative historical legacies and cultural tapestry of South Asia while seeking sustainable practices within the museums. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sakshi, and I'm going to present you a case study about a museum which is located in the Andaman and Nicobar Island. It's a part of the India. So, okay, let's begin. Over here you see the Andaman and Nicobar Island, which is located in the Bay of Bengal. It's from north to south, and it's comprised of more than 500 islands together. And there are lots of tribal communities that live over here. You can see from Onge, Nicobarese, Great Andamanese, Jarawa, and Sentinelese. Now, out of all, if you see this area called Sentinelese, a strange island far away from others, it's considered as one of the most hostile and most isolated tribal community in the world. That means that documenting them is pretty hard as compared to the other communities that we're going to talk about further ahead. Taking care of the historical timeline of the island, it was first mentioned in the Chola dynasty when the Rajavaram was used it as a naval base. We will see that how the island was used in future, depending on different dynasties or the empire that came along with time. It was also mentioned by Marco Polo in his exploration time. However, it was for the first time it was 16th, 17th century when the island was came into the knowledge about Dutch, Portuguese, and the British Empire, who were trying to set their own legacies with the island. However, they were not able to do so because of the hostile terrain and everything else. But, however, in the 18th and 19th century, for the first time, it was British East India Company that finally set up their presence into the island. However, it wasn't the entire island again. It was some parts of it. That means they were able to come in contact with lots of tribal communities that they can take away the artifacts from them. Finally, the World War II, when it was again occupied by Japanese, but then in the end, it became part of India after the independence and became one of the Union territories. Now, as I said, it was British East India Company for the first time, which actually came in contact improper with the tribal communities. That means that they had the power to actually document how the communities lived, about their environment and everything else. And three people, most importantly, were known for it, for collecting the artifacts from them, which was Edward Horace, Richard, and Catherine. Now, if you look up to it, Edward and Richard were the people who had the administration and the authority. That means they had the power to exercise, to collect, and also transfer the artifacts from the land to the main empire, to the British land, and also to the other parts of Europe. And Catherine was one of the wife of the administrator. So that means they all three were sharing the same power at that time. So coming up to that, these collections, what happened was that they transferred a lot of artifacts from this island to uh, like Pitt Rivers Museum, Brighton Museum, British Museum, and also to a lot of museums in Europe, in Leipzig and Leiden. However, there were issues. For example, when it comes to the curation. So what happened was the curation was done in more in the Edwardian and Victorian style. It was seen from the perspective of the collectors instead of from the perspective of how the tribal community see their own collection into it. Therefore, after the post-independence, ASI, which is Survey of India, set up lots of regional centers, and one of them was in the Andaman and Nicobar Island. And they are so it's more of a government museums run by the ASI. So they often associate just one or two curators in each museum instead of having a whole team of marketing, education, and everything else. So during that time, they established these four museums from anthropological, marine, zoological, forest, which all focuses on either the tribal communities or their environment. However, now we're going to focus more on the one of the case study that I'm going to discuss about, which is the Solar Anthropological Museum, which was set up in 1965. So a lot of tribes, almost all the tribes of the place was represented over here from even the Sentinelese, a little bit collection that they could acquire from them. And also there were settlers which are coming from different parts of the world to there. And they had collection overview, as I can say, from travel huts to weaponry to paintings and photography of the community. Now, interactive and educational role. So for the first time, these tribal communities were being able to co-curate with the museums and understand how the community is seen in to the local people and also to the people who are coming from outside. This island gets a lot of visitors, not from the international tourists as compared to the national tourists because generally they are the people who generally come here for vacation and all. So museum is not the first thing that they have in their mind. However, what's happening is right now that all these travel agencies now on the tour they're taking them especially to this particular museum so that the tourists can know more about the island, about the tribal communities, about how they were living, because these tribal communities are still not in contact with the locals who are living on the island. They're still isolated in a way, and they still live either on different islands or bit far away from it, so they are not in contact with locals all the time. So at the time when the museum was co-curated, it was done definitely with some of the tribal communities who could come, who could make some of the tribal huts. So when you visit, you will see a lot of tribal huts from Nicobarese tribal hut to the Andamanese, a different lifestyle, how they used to make their own houses, the clothes, and everything else. And they also have a facility of a library for the scholars in the building, which can be seen on the left top. And this is one of the great example I can talk about. It's a co-curation again done by one of the Nicobarese person called Obaid Hunj, and it was done in 2008. It's in the backyard of the museum. It's still there. So tourists who come, they often cannot go inside the tribal huts which are present inside the museum. However, this is one of the project I can say where the people can go inside, can see how the house looks like. So it's more like coming in contact with it and not just seeing it from far away as an object. However, there are still some current challenges because the museum was done back in 1960s. And yes, they have done some with fundings, they have done some, I can say, update with time. However, they still have a lot of things. For example, first, the island being very hostile and all, it's hard to document entire or maybe a lot of tribal communities' culture altogether. They still feel that they're still lacking in some section. However, they also cannot do research because the island is situated in such a way that it's very important for the Indian military. That means they stop all the researchers, be it national or international, to do their research on the tribal communities because they feel that it will threaten or something maybe lack to the other party. So because of that. And also one, as I said, these are the Sentinelese tribes as one of the most hostile. So anyone who goes, they do not come alive. So definitely it's not safe. Second is the engagement. The museum since was made a long time back and they still have updated. It's still a very static display. So that means if the young generation coming, they do not see a lot of AV and all. They do have AV film talking about the tribal culture, but it's still not very updated. So yes, they still need to improve upon that. And third is the adaptation. That means that not just the accessibility, but also in terms of right now, if you go, you see two types of language. One is English, and other is Hindi, which is like the national language of India. However, it doesn't speak about the language of the languages of the tribal communities. So anyway, they are excluded from the museum, even though they did the co-curation in the initial stages. Right now, they still feel excluded. So let's say if some of them wants to come, they still cannot understand what the collection is all about. So yeah. In terms of how I can conclude with this case study is based on the level of engagement. So the engagements I have decided is based on like two models. One is the Arnstein's ladder, which says that a museum is the entire control is on the museum owners instead of the community, whereas the Galla's model is based more on the community's power. When I look at this Regional Anthropological Museum, I feel that it's a combination of both. It does has a co-curation done with the community, so yes, they had the power to co-curate it, but also it's the museums now, the government, who are taking care of it and moving ahead with that. So yes, the museum has done its stages. It has shown things from the colonization perspective to also environmental side of the collection, how it helps the community and their own stories. Yet there are chances of improvement in the islands. And I think, I don't know if all of you attended the lecture yesterday. There was one session by Dr. Dr. Shin, I guess, from the Taiwan, and he was saying that there are two types of museums, and it's very I agree with him. It was on the indigenous communities that there are two types of museum. One is rural and other is urban. And this I feel a lot more rural, even though it's based on the Port Blair, which is the capital city of the island. It's still very rural because the funding and everything is quite lagged in the sense that it's more focused on the mainland of India instead of on these islands where a lot can be done, where the tourism is actually increasing a lot. People are not going to Maldives, which is like very close to India, but also to Lakshadweep and Andaman now. So improving them means also engaging more with the tourism and not just with the local communities. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
How do they, how will these museums survive in terms of sustainability? Is it the matrix or?
You mean in terms of financials?
Yeah,
Like the famous
they get support from the government?
Yeah, it's actually the government. So what happened is the price ticket is just, I would say, 20 pence in terms of pounds per person. So it's very less as compared to the living imagine how many tourism is coming over there. Yet it's the government which is funding, which are set by the AI, NSR, they always have regulation. So what happens is they don't have funding, the museum is running. In terms, it's impacting the, I guess, the staff member because they have just one person who cannot the entire building. And then it's just like the sweepers and all the guards who just take and critique and all. So just one person who is just taking care that okay, the collection of fine, no one is feeling, that's all. But no improvement, no engagement, as we see in the museums over here. Also, even if you compare it with the Delhi, Mumbai and all, you will see like an entire team, the improvement in the museum, but it's not the case. It's like the museum was stopped back, I guess, in 19, in the 20th century. But still there, yeah, in terms of funding, yes, the government is there. So sustainability wise, it will always be there in a way.
Like, if you could speak into this, so people. Thank you. That was fascinating. The museum's based on Port Blair, but it represents both the Andamans and the Nicobar Islands. Is there any issue, let's say, over representation of the Nicobars being kind of the islands out there? And do you see what I mean? You know, how do they capture this kind of archipelagic quality of there being two sets of islands and those differences, but some of them, you know, isn't the museum isn't in the Nicobar Islands. Do you see what I mean? Yeah, I'd be interested for some reflections on that.
They are like from north to south, I can say these islands. Either half of them are covered by the military, so it's like a no zone, or you're covered by tribal communities where they're like again no zone. So only few parts of the island is there, which can represent the entire island's tribal community and culture. And that's why I would say that unfortunately all the major museums are all situated in Port Blair at one place, be it the naval or the anthropological, the forest and all. So yes, they do represent the entire island, but only in one place because of the hostile terrain and also the military.
So, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.